See, that's where people get it wrong. That whole aesthetic of, chaos on a wall is exactly what the financial system is looking for.
Exactly. It's not chaos at all.
It's a heat map.
A heat map for future profit, 100%.
Mm.
We're always fed this official story, right? That artists are these pioneers who organically move into a forgotten neighborhood.
They bring vibrancy, they make it cool.
And then, magically revitalization just happens.
Right. But that narrative just completely papers over the unseen story, which is how that first act of rebellion gets architected, like almost immediately into a property boom.
The art is the siren song.
It's the siren song for institutional investors. It's a very visible, very public way to signal to capital, hey, over here, this area is ripe for exploitation.
And that structural critique is so important. But I think if we only focus on the financial end game, we kind of miss the raw motivation that starts the whole cycle.
Okay.
Street art and graffiti specifically are at their very core these really powerful and contentious forms of political participation.
The voice of the excluded.
It's the voice of people who have absolutely zero access to traditional institutional power. The wall is the last free medium for dissent.
So let's unpack that idea. The wall is a tool for contention, because when you look globally, street art keeps popping up as this systemic tool for opposition. It shows up exactly when the normal political channels are censored, or they're totally ineffective for huge parts of the population.
You don't need a permit. You don't need a license. You don't need a printing press.
All you need is a can of spray paint.
And the willingness to take a pretty big risk.
And the content, when it is political, it's so immediate, so territorial. I mean, think about the graffiti that started appearing in Berlin, protesting all the wealthy gentrifiers.
Right.
The rich foreigners move in, and suddenly you see walls just screaming this fiercely exclusionary statement, I'm a Berliner. You not.
It's not about nationality.
No, not at all. It's a visceral defensive cry against being priced out of your own home. It's a fight for the ownership of urban space.
A battle over who belongs. And that's where the wall becomes this active, volatile battleground for ideology. That's the most compelling part.
Like what happened in Athens.
Exactly, Syntagma Square. During the peak of the 2011 austerity protests, it was, well, you remember, the anger was just palpable.
Total institutional collapse.
Right. So someone scrawls a statement, today fascism is dying. A declaration of victory for the anti-establishment side.
Okay.
But then just hours later, someone else comes along, crosses it out, and deliberately changes the message to, today the left wing is dying.
Wow.
The physical space itself was volatile. The ideology was literally being fought over stroke by stroke in real time.
And what's wild is how that communication works. It completely bypasses formal media, the government. It relies entirely on a shared context.
It's a coded language.
Yeah, understood only by the citizens living through it.
And that's the psychological subtext we have to look at. Artists use widely recognized acronyms that are these immediate emotional gut punches against systemic failure.
Ugh.
You see ACAB everywhere.
All cops are bastards.
Or FTP, fuck the police. These aren't just, crude phrases. They are unified, instant statements of protest against police misconduct.
They're like these shorthand markers of a shared grievance that work across language barriers. But doesn't that just limit the movement? Isn't it just preaching to the choir?
That's a really good question. I mean, if the message is only understood by people who are already radicalized, maybe its reach is limited, yes. But its power comes from unification, from solidarity. And this is the key part. Some theorists argue it's the readers who actually create the message.
How so?
The art is just a trigger. It's a reflection of a collective anxiety. It succeeds because you see the symbol and you instantly fill in the blanks with your own frustration.
So the art isn't really finished until the public interacts with it mentally.
Exactly. And when that frustration turns into high-risk action, when repression isn't just an inconvenience, but actual state terror.
Then you have to get even more subversive. You have to move away from language entirely.
That's where you see this ingenious non-linguistic warfare. I mean, look at authoritarian regimes in Latin America. Argentina, during the period of state terror.
Where any visible political art was basically a death sentence?
Precisely. So activists had to switch to these almost undetectable nonverbal signals just to find each other in public.
Wait, how subtle are we talking? A spray-painted symbol is one thing, but how do you signal something without getting immediately picked up by informants?
We're talking about carrying a completely mundane object, like a small twig.
A twig.
Or using a specific non-standard purse instead of a regular handbag.
Yeah.
These tiny, simple, almost invisible acts became the codes to find fellow organizers in a city saturated with fear. They were turning silence into a weapon.
That's terrifying and brilliant. And it leads right into the silhouettes, right? The silhouettes of the disappeared.
Yes. That wasn't traditional art. That was profound psychological warfare launched right at the heart of the capital.
A counterframe to the regime's silence.
A direct counter to their policy of erasure. The government tried to make these people non-entities, so activists plastered life-sized, anonymous silhouettes everywhere and allowed observers to feel this effective pull of the missing.
Effective pull. So you mean it hits you in the gut emotionally, not just in the head logically?
Exactly. It bypassed logic and it spoke directly to a shared trauma. You didn't need a manifesto. The simple shadow of a missing human, repeated thousands of times across the city, was a visual scream.
And it goes beyond politics.
It does. I mean, you have artists like Santiago from Vomito Attack who said that for him, stenciling was just about vomiting it all out.
Yeah.
A personal cathartic release, totally separate from its function as organized protest.
That distinction is so important, the personal need versus the strategic utility. But even the strategy, the logistics of it, were dictated by the risks.
Absolutely. When state retaliation was highest, the intervention had to be anonymous. It had to be fast.
The rule of engagement was a direct response to the government's threat level.
The tools, the time, the anonymity, it was all tactical.
And if you connect that to the bigger picture in, say, Latin American cities where so many people are in informal labor, they're on the streets, moving around.
Street graphics become the most efficient way to reach them.
It's not just an artistic choice, it's a strategic one based on social and economic reality.
It's communication born from necessity.
Which brings us right back to that ultimate contradiction. The moment street art succeeds in defining a reality or a collective identity,
the system consumes the critique.
It transitions instantly from anonymous vandalism to an economic pillar. The system learns to love the aesthetic of rebellion as long as it's profitable.
The shift from resistance to real estate. And it's accelerated by this mechanism that we call art gentrification.
Okay, so unpack that mechanism. How does the art become the engine of gentrification, not just a symptom of it?
Well, it starts simply. Artists are drawn to cheap rents, so they occupy these neglected spaces.
Right.
They create a very visible, creative milieu, a vibe. This activity produces a symbolic change that investors, who are always looking for patterns, see.
And what do they see?
They see the art and perceive it as heralding an area's readiness for development. The rebellion acts as free market research for them.
And the end game is always displacement. I mean, the example of 5 Points in New York is just, it's so stark. A massive cultural landmark, decades of living art.
And then, without any warning, it was just wiped clean, painted white overnight to make way for luxury condos.
The very culture that made the property valuable was erased the second that property became worth millions.
The profit motive is clean, it's precise, it's unforgiving.
And we saw the same thing in London with the Lord Napier building in Hackney. Art that was explicitly anti-gentrification.
It was painted over for commercial development.
Even when the art is literally shouting, "Don't sell us out," the process just wins. It erases the shout and sells the space anyway.
And this whole co-option process is so normalized now that cities are trying to formalize it. Melbourne, for instance, actually recognizes street art's role in creating a vibrant urban culture.
So they set up legalized walls.
They do.
Which sounds good on the surface, supporting artists. But what's the unseen narrative there? What's the catch?
The catch is that legalization comes with massive regulatory control. Content, form, everything. The art's original, critical, disruptive nature is suppressed the moment it becomes sanctioned.
So it's not a political statement anymore. It's a municipally approved mural that drives foot traffic to local cafes.
And that suppression is helped along by public perception. The system doesn't always need to wield the paint roller because the public often demands the art be digestible.
What do you mean?
There was this fascinating survey done in Portland, Oregon. They tracked public acceptance of different kinds of street art. Overwhelmingly, people disliked the aggressive, illegible tags.
They see it as dirty, criminal.
Damaging, yeah. The raw, fast, anonymous tag is associated with disorder. But those same people were much more accepting of elaborate pieces or, non-threatening things like yarn installations.
So the public's demand for aesthetic legitimacy
steers the art toward forms that are easily marketable and socially acceptable.
So the street stops being a zone of confrontation and automatically becomes a platform for sanctioned culture. The critical, illegal act gets squeezed out for the beautiful piece that enhances property value.
It's a filter. The art that makes it to the level of public acceptance is almost always the art that poses the least threat to existing power structures.
Which is why we have to frame this whole thing as a fight for visual rights. A structural fight in a landscape totally dominated by commerce.
We have to challenge the very notion of public space.
Right. The activist parades ask the perfect question. If we must pay for public space, then it's a big contradiction in democracy, what's public and what's private.
That is the absolute crux of it. The real power of street art is in its use of the street itself. Its meaning is inseparable from the physical space it occupies and from its refusal to bow to the market.
The moment it sells out, it loses its soul.
It just becomes another commodity. To be successful, it has to have that intense, effective pull you were talking about, the power to just shock you out of your daily routine.
To shake you out of ingrained ways of thinking.
But that power is instantly diminished when the art is safe, when it's legal, when it's sponsored by the very developers or city councils that cause the social anxiety in the first place.
And you see that fight play out whenever the art is defending the truly marginalized. Indigenous rights defenders in Bolivia, the LGBTQ plus community in contested urban spaces.
The art is powerful, it's credible, it's emotionally impactful.
But its very success, its visibility, leads straight back to the marketplace trying to package the rebellion. The rebel always gets marketed.
It is the ultimate paradox. The art needs visibility to succeed, but that success makes it commercially viable, which leads to its co-option. It's designed to disrupt the system.
And the system is designed to digest disruption.
So think about the ultimate contradiction in the legal system itself. When big companies get caught using illegal street art in ads, their defense is often that the art can't be protected by copyright.
Why not?
Because it is a product of criminal conduct.
Wow. So the system itself admits it cannot legally own the true unauthorized rebellion. The raw tag, the unfiltered political scream.
Which leaves you with a really uncomfortable question.
What price is paid when artists willingly legitimize their work? When they sell it and let it become just another consumable part of urban branding?
The price is the erasure of the wall as the unfiltered voice of the excluded. It just becomes a beautiful, sanctioned echo.
That is a hell of a thing to chew on. The idea that maybe only the unmarketable art can ever retain its integrity.
Next time, we should talk about boundaries.
How every line drawn on a wall, in the sand, or in a conversation is secretly an invitation to be crossed.
This episode is powered by Neon Core Media for stories they said were too real to tell.